Code. So, hi guys. So minimum standards changes, like we said, every 6 years without a doubt. And then the other times it changes, we're completely up in the air. We don't know why it's going to change. So if you haven't gotten a hold of the standards, oh, you have no sound, Ruth Ann. Well, do other people hear me? If you could drop something in the chat.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So Ruth Ann, we may just have to send it to you. For people who don't have the sound working, I will send out to everybody who registered the recording, and we'll see if that works. Okay. I don't have anybody doing the closed captioning, so I don't know if that will work because the auto closed captioning doesn't work all the time. So minimum standards has changed all 3 versions. The school aged, the home based, and the child care center based, they've all changed. They've pretty much all changed in the same way.
Ready.
Ruth Ann, we can hear
Send
you.
Lindsay down here for a minute, please. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to mute Ruth Ann. I'm keeping the chat open so that if you guys have questions as we go, drop them in the chat or do the raised hand, and I will try to see you in the raised hand also. 200 pages, what does it all come down to?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why I'm not getting any sound on this.
I don't know, Ruth Ann.
I'm getting no sound. I'm not the only one. Somebody else said they weren't, but they said.
Okay. So
where? Right here?
Well, now you're not. See,
okay, Ruth Ann, I've got to keep you muted.
But then when I click off of it, but I'm still not getting any sound.
So my guess, Ruth Ann, is that
I don't know. What if you click more? I think in the beginning it says.
Okay. We're gonna just hope that Ruth Ann figures it out, and if not, like I said, Ruth Ann, I will send you the recording.
Video.
And use the chat feature. Okay. So what are the big changes in the minimum standards? I'm going to go through them one by one, but let's talk about, there's a couple that are, I think, really good. I think they probably came from providers saying, hey, this is a thing that needs to change. And a couple of them were just a clarification, probably because somebody did something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so something needed to be clarified. The big deals are they've clarified activity plans a little bit. They've clarified what you need to do if you have a child with a diagnosed special need, or a child who seems to have a disability or a special need. We've had some changes to what volunteers and contractors have to do. And we have some changes to the first aid kit. Finally, I feel like that will, I don't know. I feel like those needed to be updated about 10 years ago. And clarified some more stuff on what is supervision. They stopped using percentages as to what percentage had to be. Hi, Miss Wen. How many hours you needed that were instructor-led training. Instead of saying a percentage, they just gave us flat hours, which I think is helpful. And I think those are the big things that have happened in the minimum standards. So nothing that is going to freak you out, nothing that's a huge big deal. I think they're all pretty straightforward. So let's just go through them one by one. Some of them are real little, like they changed where it said state or local fire marshal to state or local fire fire professional. So fire authority. So some of them are really small like that. Okay. The first thing that they changed is they made it very, very clear. Okay, so we've got another person who doesn't have, their sound isn't working. Guys, everybody, I'm going to send out a copy of the recording to everyone. Will I have some after daycare hours? I don't know. I've got a lot of our in-home providers are asking for those, so I might do one next week, both during nap time and one after hours. Okay. The first big thing is clarification on reporting of child maltreatment, abuse, neglect, and molestation. They have made it very clear that every member of staff has to make reports if they suspect abuse, neglect, or molestation. They cannot delegate it to you as the leader of the program. And you, as the leader of the program, cannot require that they tell you before they call the hotline or report it online. Okay. They cannot delegate the requirement to report. They have to be the one to report it. You may not have seen the thing or heard the thing that raised the red flag. So you're not in a position to legally make the report. It has to be the person who saw or heard the thing. And you don't get to approve whether or not they make the report. They have gotten the training every year in how to report abuse, neglect, or molestation. And so it's their job, and it's our job to let them do that. If they want us to sit in the room while they make that phone call or while they type up their report, that's great. But we cannot require to be notified, and we can't make the report for them. Okay. And it also makes it clear that as the head of the school, you can't tell other people about what you find out about somebody in their criminal background check. Okay. So again, our home-based programs, that's not nearly as big a deal as it is in the centers and the after-school programs. The next part is about danger. And this is something that I've been getting more and more programs reaching out to me because they've gotten cited from licensing. Anytime a child has been put in a situation where they could have been in danger, you have to call licensing. They've clarified the language here a little bit. If the kids went out to play and there was a snake in the play yard, in the playground, you need to call licensing. You need to send, actually don't call them, send them an email because then there's a record that you did it and what you did and when you did it. It could have placed the child in danger. You went out, you know, when the kid told you there was a snake, you went over and looked at it. It was green. None of the venomous snakes are green. So you have the thought, I don't need to call it in. But the issue is that it may have put the child in danger. Not that it actually did, that it could have, because it could have been a venomous snake. Okay. Does this mean you're going to be calling in things where nothing happened? Absolutely. You are going to be sending in emails to say that a toilet was blocked up And so the kids had one fewer toilet than they normally do available in the building, which could have put the children in danger because there could have been a problem where there weren't enough toilets for the number of children. Did it? No, you made arrangements. You figured it out, right? But it could have put the children at risk. Another situation, a parent says that their child came home talking about something of a sexual content, and they know that it happened at your school, is where that child got that information about that sexual content. You know your program, and you know that that didn't happen at your school. But you still have to call licensing, and you don't get to do the investigating as to whether or not that sexual content came from your school or from your home. That's not, you don't get to make that decision. That is licensing's job. Are they ready to get all these notifications? Probably not. Probably not. There's probably going to be a whole bunch of backlog. Usually those reports are reviewed within 48 hours. There's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be way more of those than we expect. Somebody asked for the standard numbers. Well, they're different depending on which minimum standards you're using. So I'm going to tell you what they are. The one I'm reading through right now is the school aged, which is 744. So the one I just read was 744-3074. So let me find out what it is in 747 for the in-home programs. It's 747-3054. And let's see what it is in childcare centers. Yeah, 746-3056 is what it is in childcare center. The numbers are slightly different in the 3 different sets of standards. Yes, you should just email your representative. And it's any non-routine situation. Another example of this would be a child who climbed up a fence or climbed up some structure, a piece of equipment, whatever. They climbed on top of something or climbed up something, and they got to a point where their feet were more than 2 feet off the ground. Because if you fall from 2 feet off the ground, you don't have to have a fall surface. But if they climbed up, I'm probably not the only person who's had a toddler who can scale high chairs. So if a child has scaled a high chair, they are in a situation that is not routine that could have put the child at risk. So that's the type of thing they're looking for. Okay. What is the reasoning behind this new rule? They don't always give us the reasonings behind them. Most of the time, when you have something like this, it's because, well, I know part of the reason for this is because they've been citing schools, and the schools have been responding that this situation didn't put a child at risk. And so since they said, but the child wasn't at risk, they're having to go through the appeal process because the licensing cited the school said the kid wasn't at risk. So they changed the language to say is at risk or could have been at risk. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, got a couple of head nods. So, okay. So they also clarified that they renamed some stuff in this area. So we're at 401 now, 401.5 in the school age, 744.405. I mean, 401 parentheses 5. it's telling us that they renamed the section. And this is one of the ones that I think is pretty exciting. Not because it's groundbreaking, but because they're doing something because of what we said, which is we no longer have to have a landline in our programs. And so it has clarified that you need to know the address of your school or have it posted so that people of your program, so that whoever is calling 911 can say where you are. Because when we had to have a landline, it set in minimum standards that you had to call 911 from the landline so that 911 would know where you were. Okay, so that's a change. You just need to make sure everybody knows where you guys are. Are all these reports going to generate child abuse and neglect investigations? No, but some of them will make it so that licensing comes out to do an inspection. So you may have more inspections. There may be some new abuse and neglect accusations, but that's what they're trying to get at. Is that these are situations where children were not, we're at risk. And so we have to make sure that it's just an accident and that it's not a system of child maltreatment. Okay. I know it's annoying and it can be a little cumbersome, but okay. In 744-501, which in the others, we're in record keeping. So it's 605 in all of them. So we're at record keeping. What information do you have to have? You're about to have to update your handbooks, guys. Is everybody prepared to update your handbooks or your contracts? So section 13, let's see, in the school age, what is it? Yeah, 13 across the board has you updating your handbooks, because it now says that you have to be clear on your rules about medications for long-term use, like say insulin or nebulizers or things like that. Some kids, they're on allergy medicine prescribed from their doctor for 6 months out of the year. That now needs to be in your handbook. Anything that it limits or restricts the children's activities, and stuff about special care for child, special care the child requires, including reasonable accommodations or modifications. That goes back to the 90s, guys, with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Adaptive equipment that you're going to use in the program, symptoms or indications of potential complications. So what this is saying is you need to update what's in your handbook. And if you have somebody who enrolls who has known disabilities, you need to get from the parents what the symptoms and indications are that something might be going wrong. What are the adaptive materials that the parents are going to be providing? What are the adaptive materials they're going to help you to get? Because there are grants that the parents can ask for to get equipment for your center for kids who have mobility issues or other significant disabilities. Okay. But that now needs to be in your handbook, as does, they changed the thing about the pre-existing conditions. And now it says that it includes that they have to tell you if their child has allergies, an existing illness, a previous serious illness or injury, or hospitalizations in the past 12 months. So this is an onus on the parents. They have to give you that information, but that means you have to put in your handbook that they have to give you that information. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's in the record keeping section, which is the 600s. And of course, we still have the allergy action plan. Okay. Another thing, oh, I didn't mention this. Back in the whole situation that non-routine situation that may have put a child at risk, you also have to notify the parents. There was a green snake on the playground. The parents have to be notified. Okay. The reason for this, I do know the reason for that. There were more than one case last year where a child was left unattended for a period of time, whether that was 30 seconds or 15 minutes. It doesn't matter. They were left unattended, and licensing was notified, but the parents did not know until licensing came to do the investigation. So they've clarified that the parents need to know if the child was put in a situation where they could be in danger. Okay, so that's where that one comes from. Okay. So I'm going to take a break here. We've gone through several things. Is there, no, you only have to notify the impacted parents. Do you want to do it in writing? I don't know. Do you want to be able to prove to licensing that you did it? It does not say in minimum standards that you have to notify them in writing. It says you have to notify them. I would suggest doing it in writing because then you have proof that you notified them. But it can be notifying them in writing by putting a sign on the door of the classroom that you dated. Okay, that is notifying them in writing, and you would have a record of it. Okay. It clarifies a little bit in 1301 what information has to be kept in personnel records. And how long you have to keep written record of how long the non-routine, how long after the non-routine situation happened. Let me look up what it says on that. I have them all open, so this is 701. They've added a lot into technical assistance in here as well. So where's 701? That's 901. Okay. Okay, it says that they expanded this. Oh, maintain training requirements. Okay, I don't see the thing that they say they clarified in 701. It was just that they clarified by putting the word non-routine. Any other non-routine situation that placed or may have placed a child at risk of injury or harm, such as forgetting a child in an operations vehicle or not preventing a child from wandering away from the operation unsupervised. Okay, so they're just adding the word non-routine. Okay. Is the state going to send all this? They sent out an email to you on March 1st. If you did not receive that email, you need to reach out to your licensing rep and update the email that licensing has for you in the master file. The email that your licensing rep has is not necessarily the one that is keyed to your license of your program. So if you did not receive this email, you need to reach out to your licensing rep and update the email. Okay. So going back to notifying licensing and parents, if a child with behavior problems began throwing, pushing furniture, and children were evacuated from the room, would we need to notify? Is that a is that a, what is the word? It just escaped my head. What is the word they're using? I was like non-normal. Is it a
non-routine?
There you go. Non-routine. If evacuating the room is routine because you have a child with a behavior problem, then yes. If it is routine, then no, you wouldn't have to notify the parents. But if this is non-routine, then yes, you would have to notify the parents. But there'll be a time where it's non-routine and then it becomes routine. So you would notify them while it's non-routine. If it becomes routine, you'll notify parents that you have a child who's having some anger management issues or however you want to phrase it. And if that child needs to be isolated, we will be removing your child, the other children from the space. Then you wouldn't need to notify. Does that make sense? Oh, great. Thank you, Brenda. So she shared the ones for 746. When I send out the recording, yesterday, they hadn't updated 744. They hadn't updated any of them when I checked yesterday morning. So they updated 746 some point during the day yesterday. So if they've updated 744 and 747, I will send those updates out with the recording of today. Okay. So there is a version that is a memo, and then there's another version that highlights all the changes. So there's two different versions. Is there a definition for routine? No. There's not. Yeah, that's a hard question, Elsie. What do you guys think? Does this include if you are a witness to a parent who has left a child in a situation that might be unsafe or non-routine, such as bringing a pet onto the playground for pickup, or got into a fender bender when leaving the campus? Okay. If a pet came onto the playground that you did not have the shot records for, then that would be a situation that could have put children at risk. So the parents cannot be bringing animals onto the playground when the children are in the playground because you don't have their vaccination records. And no animal can be on the property without you or the contractor who is bringing them having the vaccination records available for licensing. So I don't know. That's a little bit of a gray area. Yeah, as far as the fender bender, I think the fender bender you don't need because they're leaving your property. If the fender bender happened in your parking lot, that's a very gray area, but the parent has taken custody of the child at that point. So they're not under your responsibility anymore. I probably would notify licensing just because I don't want to get in trouble and I want to over communicate with my licensing representative, but I don't think it's required. Okay. So, yeah, they changed the name of something in the different ways to become a qualified director. So that's not a big deal. But we do have a significant difference when we get to 12. So 744-1203 or Let's make sure it's the same number. Yeah, it's 1203 and the others as well. So back to being more clear about what we have to do with children who have disabilities. Well, actually, I guess this one isn't really about the disabilities, but it clarifies. So I'm just going to read it instead of trying to explain it. 744 or 746 or 747 1203. It adds the requirement that caregivers provide care that is consistent with the child's habits, interests, strengths, and any special needs, including any special supervision needs or care. Okay, so that's a little bit of the special needs thing. I told you we were clarifying a lot of special needs stuff. But here's the thing that I think is a good change. So this is part 6. Replaces the previous requirement that caregivers must ensure that children are not out of control.
Interruption.
So there used
Please
to be
remember at dismissal time, when the bell rings, you may stay in your seats until your dismissal mode is announced.
I don't know who that
Will
is.
stay in your seats, not lined up at the door, not out in the hallway.
Okay. So it used to say that the teachers must ensure that the children are not out of control. And when we were talking before about a kid who's throwing equipment, we can't ensure that that child doesn't throw that equipment, right? That's an unreasonable expectation. We're not in their bodies. We can't control their bodies. So it's been changed to caregivers must set appropriate behavior expectations based on the children's current stage of development. So I think this is a change that probably came from caregivers, came from us, and got changed. And I think this one's really good. So I think that's a good one. They changed where the supervision responsibilities are broken down from one place to another. It used to be in 1205, and now it is in, well, it's still in 1205. I don't know. They just moved from a different part of 1205. Make sure that everybody knows that part of supervising is being able to intervene when necessary to ensure a child's safety. It clarifies you have to know the kids by saying the child's chronological age. So when you're deciding how closely you supervise an individual child, you pay attention to the child's chronological age, the child's current stage of development, their individual differences and abilities, the indoor and outdoor layout of your operation, circumstances, hazards, and risks surrounding the child, and the child's physical, mental, emotional, and social needs. So they've just clarified a little bit more what they mean by you don't have to supervise all kids exactly the same. A child who is, having a lot of emotional turmoil because their parent just died, you're going to supervise more closely than a child who's normally developing and not having any sort of trauma in their life. Okay. So the next thing is the training hours. We used to have that whole 80% of the training has to be given in this way and 10% this way and whatever. So now it's been broken down based on how many hours instead of what percentage, which I think is a good change. So let's look at what it is for all of the different types of programs. So if you are an after-school program, and so your staff need to get 20 hours of training a year, they have to have 3 of those 20 hours that are instructor-led. If you are in a childcare program, 5 of the 24 hours for your staff have to be instructor led. And if you are a home-based program, how many hours? 3 of your annual training hours must for the caregivers. So if you have an assistant in your home-based program, 3 of their 15 hours has to be instructor led. For the directors, it's 5 hours. If you need 24 hours, it is 5 hours, and it is 4 hours if you only need 20. So if you're a school age program, you need 4 of your 20 hours to be instructor led. Yay. No more having to do math. They've made it much easier. You can count to 5. So I think we're all going to be good, right? So I think that that's another good addition, because people were like, why do we have to do math? Let's just not. Okay, here's one that's going to be hard for some programs and no big deal for others. They're clarifying who needs the orientation and who needs the pre-service. Anybody who's counted in ratios at any time has to have their orientation and their pre-service, unless they meet the same exceptions that any of your caregivers have, as far as they've worked in the industry, right? 6 months or 2 years, depending on which part of that we're worrying about. Okay. Everybody has to have an orientation. Everyone has to have an orientation if they are with the children. The orientation for somebody who's just helping out on a field trip is a field trip orientation. You don't have to have the whole, here's where the fire extinguisher is, this is where we keep minimum standards, here's all of that, because they're going on a field trip. They're not going to have the fire extinguishers with them. Well, they'll have the one in the van, but you orient them to the things that they need to know. If they're not being counted in ratios. Yes, even your vendors. So if you've got Soccer Shots coming in, Soccer Shots has to have an orientation and they have to have pre-service training. In addition, they have to have the annual training. If they're ever counted in ratios, they'll have to get their annual 15, 20, or 24 hours of training. Okay. So if they're ever counted in ratios, they'll have to have pre-service, they'll have to have orientation, and they're going to have their annual training. And if they're ever left unattended by a member of your staff who has first aid and CPR, they'll also have to have first aid and CPR. So if you have, I'm using Soccer Shots as my example here. If Soccer Shots is coming into your program and the Soccer Shots has provided you with copies of their training, their training log, that's all you need is a copy of their training log. You don't have to do their training. You just need a copy of their training log. But if that training log does not have a current first aid and CPR with pediatric CPR, your staff member, you always have to have a staff member with that Soccer Shots employee or contractor who has first aid and CPR. So they can't, you've got 2 teachers in that classroom and one is CPR trained and the other isn't. This person cannot be the one left on the playground with Soccer Shots. It has to be the one with the CPR. Does that make sense? Okay. So this was one of those things that people thought there was some gray area, which is why I said, for some of you, this is going to hit hard. And for other people that are like, I was already doing that. So they've made it very, very clear. Everybody has to have an orientation, and people who are not counted in standards or in ratios, that's all they have to have. Okay. So if you want your Soccer Shots coach who comes out and has been with you for 3 years, you need to make sure that they're getting their annual training hours. Directors of centers, how many instructor led? 6. 6 of the hours need to be instructor led if you are a center. Yeah. Okay. So, and again, they have the same exemptions as far as pre-service and orientation that your caregiving staff do, meaning that if they've worked in the industry for 6 months or 2 years, depending on which exemption you're looking for, they may not have to have the pre-service, right? For those of you who are wanting to know where that is in standards, it's 1401 through 1405, I think, is the end of that section. Okay. Okay, we're doing well, guys. We're 45 minutes in. Can you believe it? We still have like 4 pages left. So Camille, the 5 was for your staff. So I think, or it might have been directors for another type of program. I'd have to flip back through, but 1311 clarifies that at least 6 of the 30 required annual hours for a director must come from instructor-led training. Okay. In 2009 is where they clarify special needs. What has changed in special needs? And really, what they have said is you have to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's what this whole section is. It's a half a sheet of paper. And all of it is saying that you have to make reasonable accommodations for children who have special needs. A reasonable accommodation for a child who has an anaphylactic peanut allergy is what? What is a reasonable accommodation for a child with anaphylactic peanut allergy? I'm sure one of you guys can type it in the comments, right? Having an EpiPen, that is one reasonable accommodation. What is the second one that you could do? So you can do either one of these. The other one would be to make your program a peanut-free zone, right? A no nut policy, right? So you can do either one of those. Those are both considered reasonable accommodations. Okay. If you have a child who has cerebral palsy and they use a walker, sometimes a reasonable accommodation is making sure that there aren't any loose rugs, because if you're using a walker, if you've ever had a broken leg and had to move around on crutches, you know how much of a terror loose rugs can be when you're using a mobility aid, right? So if you've got a child who sometimes uses a walker or crutches, then you might want to remove loose carpets or tape all carpets down. Those would be reasonable accommodations. Getting rid of all of the pea gravel on all of the playgrounds is not a reasonable accommodation. Laying the rubber, there's rubber stuff you can lay on top of pea gravel if pea gravel is your fall surface that somebody using a mobility aid can use. They can go on those rubber sections on top of your pea gravel or your bark mulch or the tire mulch. Okay. So Barbie, yes, Texas Rising Star requires more hours. So far as I know, Texas Rising Star has not changed how many need to be instructor led. Okay. So make sure that that's fine. Make sure that when you have a child who has a diagnosed special need, that you have recommendations from either the school district or a medical professional, okay, a healthcare professional. providing children with accommodations recommended by the healthcare professional or qualified professional from the school district. If you do not have the recommendations from a medical professional or the school district, you're just shooting in the dark when you have special need, when you have a child with special needs. So tell the parents, again, going back to that whole, it now needs to be in your policies that I need something from a medical professional or the school district telling me what the reasonable accommodations are that they're asking for. Okay. I think that one is pretty clear going forward. They took some stuff out of the guidance section, which is 2105, because they expanded the definition of corporal punishment. So this does not mean that you can now allow your staff to pinch the children and bite the children. That's now just, instead of being a separate thing, it's now part of corporal punishment. Okay. So that, you know, one family you have who says, well, you should just bite them back. When you've got a toddler who bites, you can go, no, that's corporal punishment and it's illegal. I'm sorry, we can't do that here. And we can't allow you to do that here either. Because I've had a parent say, okay, well, okay, you can't bite them, but if you call me when they bite, I'll come in and I'll bite them for you. No biting. No biting of children by adults. Should I report the parent who asks such? I think it's worth sending an email to your licensing rep to give them a heads up. Yes. Are you required to? No. Okay. Another thing that people got very confused by in the last update to minimum standards was the thing saying you had to have enough food so that kids could have seconds. And the compromise that has come back is that you have to have enough food for a second servings of vegetables, fruit, grain, and dairy. You don't have to have seconds of anything that is a treat or anything that is your protein. Okay. So if they have as a treat at the end of a meal, strawberries and whipped cream, if you were counting those strawberries as your fruit, they can have seconds of the strawberries, but they don't necessarily get seconds of the whipped cream. Does that make sense? I don't know why this needed to be clarified. So, but I'm going to read you what got clarified. There is a requirement that drinking water, a supply of drinking water must be clean, sanitary, and available during active play. So the children have to have access to clean, sanitary drinking water when they're outside on the playground. I know a lot of you guys have solved this problem by telling all the parents to bring their kids a water bottle. And then it's not your monkey. Other options are an igloo and Dixie cups. I'm a child of the 70s. Igloos and Dixie cups got me through an awful lot. We also use these things called water fountains. I know they're very passe, but in the 70s, that's how we survived. And water hoses, also a big thing in the 70s. So you can use any of those things because a water hose would still be sanitary and all of that. Clean, sanitary, and available. You just can't have the water hose stuck in the mud during the times, right? Okay. Health practices. Are you guys ready? You guys ready? This is one of those things that I'm very excited about because I've been cited for first aid kits more times than I care to admit. It now says you can use the infrared thermometer. Who's excited? Anybody excited but me? You don't have to have the one that the battery dies on every three kids, and you don't have to have the mercury thermometer anymore. You can just have the infrared one. The rechargeable one, yeah, makes me very excited. Okay. You also no longer have to have cotton balls or various sizes of Band-Aids. You can just have one size of Band-Aid if you want, and you don't have to have cotton balls. Okay. So those have changed. So we have a fewer things there. Can I provide care on floors other than ground floor of your building? They say, don't ask me, go ask your fire, what does it say? Local fire authority. The last thing is some clarifications on transportation safety devices. The passenger, what kind of passenger car seats do I need to have? And the answer is you have to make sure that any car seats you use are not expired or have been damaged or have been in an accident. Translation, you need to buy them, or you need to have the parents bring them to you in original boxes. Okay? Because if they bring one from, that their brother used 3 years ago, how do I know whether that's been in an accident or not? I don't. So no more hand-me-down car seats. Okay. And they've changed they had broken down what kind of restraint to use at which age, and they just went, never mind, just do whatever TxDOT says. So that if TxDOT changes the rules, they don't have to be out of compliance in minimum standards. Okay. And that's it, guys. Yay. So nothing is scary, really. The two big changes are really them breaking down the stuff about special needs kids more in depth, and the whole reporting anything that might possibly make anybody in danger ever. Okay. I'll be happy to send it off. I've got an Excel spreadsheet of who registered for the class. I will send it out to all of you guys along with the links to the various versions of minimum standards. And, I read government ease, so I have no problem reading it and helping you guys out with it. If there's anything else that you guys have concerns with or questions with, let me know. I'm here. I do office hours every week. I don't always publish them. I just try to schedule anybody who wants to talk to me into those office hours. So if you guys want, I guess I could put the office hours in the newsletter. So that there's a standard time for people to reach out to me. But I've been in this industry for a really long time, and I just want to make it easier for you guys to run your programs. Any other questions? Yes to the office hours. Well, yeah, Ray, you stopped coming to my free trainings on Facebook. That's why you want the office hours. I know. So for those of you who don't know, Texas Director does have a group. It's called Childcare Conversations. And in that we do free 15-minute mini trainings every Thursday. So, no, Ray, I'm just teasing you. You don't have to apologize. So have a great week, and I'll just stay on and I'll mute myself. And if you guys have any other questions, I'll just answer them here in the comment section. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. What?
Hello? Hello?
I forgot
Hello?
I muted myself. Hi, Florence. What can I do for you?
Okay, I had to send the child to the restroom real quick while you were talking about the first aid kit. And you were saying that when I got back, I heard we don't need cotton balls and we only need one size Band-Aids. Anything
That's
else
right.
I missed on that part?
No, the other thing is they now specifically say we can use the infrared thermometers. So you don't have to keep buying those ones with the batteries that die all the time.
Uh-oh. Okay, so okay.
If the batteries work better for you than they do for me, then keep going with those. But I really like the rechargeable element of the infrared thermometers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got me. Yeah, when they got on sale, I went on and just snatched them on up. Okay, and then the other one. You said when on the feeding part, long as we have extra vegetables and fruit, we don't have to worry about the protein part of it.
Yeah, you just don't have to worry about protein or any treats that you might be giving. They have to have fruits, vegetables, grain, and milk.
So bread, okay, so okay. Well, that's pretty much what we were doing anyway, I think, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, mostly you want extras of the green beans, right?
yeah. I'm about to say, yeah, we normally do the extra fruit and vegetables, but they don't normally eat more than a half a slice of bread anyway.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
But
Did
just
you
to make
throw
sure they
it?
have it.
Don't
You know
throw
what I mean?
it on the floor.